Hey everyone, so you all may have noticed by now that my channel was banned from YouTube, and I can't go into detail as to why that happened, since that's the reason I was banned, but you all will know about it within the following days or weeks, since many big podcasts are planning on having me on soon to tell my story and the things that I've discovered which YouTube is actively attempting to cover up. Point is, though, that I lost fucking everything. All my subscribers, all my fucking views. I had 500,000 total upload views and 3,300 subscribers. Now, that's not the biggest channel in the world, but having to start all over again fucking sucks. Now, it's not going to be as bad this time because I already had a decent amount of people who knew about me as opposed to the first time where I built it up from scratch, but I mean, there's just nothing nice about it. No nice way to put it. But anyway, I'm back, I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere, so please do subscribe again and get the word out, everybody, that this is my channel and this is where I'm at. Thank you all so much. Sorry for the rambling. I'll get to the video now.
As a voluntarist, I believe in the non-aggression principle, that force cannot be used against others, and that's what makes me an anarchist.
Your support for the NAP, which defends property rights, is what's inconsistent with traditional anarchism, but we'll get to that in a moment.
Oh, fuck. It's gonna be one of those videos. Some dumbass who doesn't know how philosophy or logic works, using every cliché collectivist anarchist argument in the book to attempt to shove an argument against individualist anarchism, with nothing but broken reasoning and fallacies at their disposal, as demonstrated here. Anarchism, being a philosophy which advocates for the abolition of the government and all political hierarchy, is in no way in consistency with property rights, both by itself in principle, since property rights are derived from self-ownership, and historically, since the first anarchist was an individualist named William Godwin, and stateless societies have existed with private property, see Ancient Ireland.
If you believe collectivism and collective force should be used against others, you can't be an anarchist.
This is a totally false statement.
No, it's a perfectly legitimate statement, because collective force requires the threat of violent coercion, which requires a political hierarchy, since without systemic arbitration, the individual can defend themselves and the coercive entity would be criminal. For there to be no violent coercion and for the individual to be able to keep to themselves is to not have a coercive political authority, which would make the system an individualist anarchy, since the individual submits to no political authority. The only way anything even remotely resembling libertarian socialism can exist is if it exists within an individualist framework, that being that individuals choose to collectivize into a socialist worker cooperative or a communist communal society, but no one is violently forced into surrendering their property or forced to associate in one manner with no choice to opt out, because doing otherwise would require violent coercion to suppress dissenters. If coercive violence is required for the system to function, it cannot be libertarian or anarchist.
Because anarchism has its roots in collectivism. For example, the first person to use the word anarchism and call himself that was Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, who famously stated that property is theft.
Except aside from the noted historical inaccuracy of that statement, even if this was true, this still is not an explanation for how individualism can't be anarchist. It's a no true Scotsman wrapped up with an appeal to tradition fallacy.
Anarchism has always been a left-wing political current, and even Murray Rothbard recognised this, concluding that to call right-wing capitalists anarchists is completely unhistorical.
That is an outright lie. He is referring to the modern state of anarchist philosophy at the time that he wrote this article, and how his philosophy cannot be compared to the other groups, which you just conveniently left that part out. You know, why do you even cite the original article if you're going to quote mine it like this? Do you think that everyone watching your video is just too stupid to actually look at the source which you openly provided, or do you think that they're too ignorant to care?
Rothbard was also enthusiastic about the right-wing acquisition of the term libertarian, which was previously applied to left-wing anarchists.
You know, I don't even know why you bother citing the original sources if you're just going to boldly lie about what it said and take it out of context like this. I know that the typical socialist can't read, but you know that your dissenters can, right?
Seizing the means of production is a form of sabotage against a business you willingly signed up for.
A choice between homelessness and starvation and working even though you really don't want to is not a fair choice at all. Every sane person on the planet would do everything they can to minimize their own suffering.
Ha! Oh my god, I can't tell what's funnier, that he thinks that not working is a choice, or that he thinks that he wouldn't be working under socialism or communism. You're unironically the character in this meme. Also, way to completely dodge the point that he was making. How do you justify violently stealing the product of another person's actions or destroying it, especially when all they did was offer you a job?
You don't believe in personal property.
Actually, we do. We make a distinction between personal and private properties. So, for example, your dog, your toothbrush, your suitcase, and your house is personal property.
How many times do we have to go over this? There is no distinction between personal and private property because any commodity can be utilized to become a means of production to profit off of. And he doesn't link the original video in the description, but based on Josh Stiggerdson's upward inflection, it sounds like this clip was edited out of context. I don't know. Let's see the original video.
You signed up for a job. We didn't sign up for our humanity and free will to be plundered by the state. That's the difference. It's easy for you to want to destroy some capitalist business, though, isn't it? First of all, you're jealous that they can accomplish more than you because running a company is really freaking difficult. But on top of that, you don't believe in personal property, which is a dim-witted approach to reality, as in that case, your body is your property, and you shouldn't care if someone rapes your mother or kills you, right? Now, I know that that's an unpopular metaphor, but it's true. Or how about someone takes your house for a while because it's not yours, it's everyone's, right? So someone can work their ass off for years to buy their family a home, and then you come along, a veteran Cheeto eater who got a huge kill count on Call of Duty, and suddenly because it's collectively fair to you, you can have that house too.
Well, not only did you take him out of context, but you omitted so much of what he said that you essentially changed his argument. That is another level of dishonesty. Now it seems much less like you're oblivious to the inherently coercive nature of collectivism and more like you're deliberately trying to weasel your way out of addressing it.
Why did I turn away from socialism? Because it's irrational. Socialism is the equivalent of putting the Earth at the center of the solar system. It may explain a few things if you look at it in a certain way, but the errors accumulate, the problems accumulate so much that you can't sustain it.
I find it hilarious when I'm called irrational by so-called capitalists who don't even understand the practical usage of the state.
Well, simply put, there is none. Even the majority of non-anarchist market advocates generally take the position that less government is better. And would you like to know why? Because there is no circumstance under which the economy has improved as a result of the government interfering in the market. The government's interference causes prices of commodities to increase through inflation and artificial scarcity created by regulation, while making it more difficult for people to earn enough to sustain themselves by plundering the money that they earn, making work more scarce through the cost of hiring laborers through employers, and regulations making it nearly impossible to become self-employed or to become an entrepreneur. And it does this while stealing from us and forcing itself onto us in order to survive, only so it can make conditions worse for the average person through what it does to the economy. The only people who get any practical use out of the government are corporatists who lobby for regulations to make it more difficult for competitors to enter the market, and legislators who profit directly from the government's actions.
The state legally defends property rights and uses the police force and sometimes the military to put down workers who attempt to rebel against these laws.
As noted, private property is the result of individual self-ownership and exists because the individual owns the product of their own actions. If the state existed to protect private property, then why is it that the oldest established trade routes found in maritime history are over 100,000 years old, while the oldest states are only 5,500 years old? How do you explain examples of stateless societies such as ancient Ireland or neutral Moorsnet, which had private property in their common law? And how would you explain the ancient graves discovered by archaeologists older than the oldest state, which are frequently buried with private property, implying that they knew that property was a thing?
Anarcho-capitalists completely ignore the class nature of the state.
What are you talking about? We call out the state all the time as a coercive ruling class which has a monopoly on violence. Oh, you mean a class war kind of class. Yeah, the kind that doesn't actually exist or have any institutional power. Okay, moving on.
And seek to abolish the one thing that both perpetuates capitalism and keeps the proletariat suppressed.
That's not only wrong, but that's completely backwards. The state is an active hindrance to capitalism since it requires the violation of our private property rights and forced association to exist, and as noted, it harms the economy to where competition virtually cannot exist. And I know that you know that a market without competition produces some bad results. Also, it's rather ironic that you claim that the state perpetuates private property while the only way coercive violence and forced association can be institutionalized is through a political hierarchy, which, by the way, are both things which a collectivist society's economy needs to function. So really, now you're just taking the biggest crux for your position that you're defending, which you actively ignore and refuse to acknowledge, and project it onto your political opponents baselessly, which of course, if you did the smallest bit of research into the ideologies outside of your echo chamber, you'd realize that anarcho-capitalists have a solid explanation for private property existing without a state. So, it's a pretty stupid move on your part.
And since you called socialism unsustainable, I feel compelled to point out that under the current system, humanity is on the brink of extinction due to climate change.
But let's ignore the actual data for a moment, which suggests that climate change hysteria is a nothing burger, and assume that environmental problems are an actual problem and that humans are causing harm to the atmosphere. Collectivist economies are objectively worse for the environment, and there are two reasons as to why this is the case. Firstly, because there's no innovation under central planning, because there's no competition, so there's no way to innovate towards production which requires less and puts out less. Secondly, because there's no incentive to maintain the means of production under a centrally planned model, since there's no direct incentive for the individuals operating it, whereas market economies have a direct profit incentive which will only be maintained as long as the owners make sure the means of production are functioning optimally. A historical example of this would be the Black Sea when it was controlled by the Soviet Union.
Capitalism is an unsustainable economic system because it depends upon ever-increasing growth.
Actually, the market grows because producers are always competing with one another, and growth is a good thing because it leads to innovation, which makes everything cheaper, reduces the labor necessary to produce commodities, and makes commodities more efficient. And as noted earlier, coercive interference in the market actively hinders its ability to function, meaning, of course, that the state or collectivism is inherently harmful for the economy. Not only that, but if you just leave the market the fuck alone, it would eventually lead to a society much like the one that socialists or communists describe their system creating. And that's it for today's video. If you liked it, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.